Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Major Applications Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Reggie Labour, the Committee Chairman. I will start, please, by doing apologies for absence.
Apologies have been received from Councillor Morse. Thank you.
Okay, any declarations of interest? I'm hoping not, as it's a one-item agenda. I have minutes of the 12th of July and 1st of August in the bundle. Can I take those as agreed? Agreed. Thank you. There is only one item on tonight's agenda, which is Willow Tree Depot, Ditchfield Road. It's a Part 1 item in public, and that's the only matter we are considering tonight. It is, let me just do a couple of housekeeping points. We never need them, but you never know. If the fire alarm goes off, there's no test plans, so we're assuming it's real, and therefore fire exit that way and fire exit that way. But officers will lead everybody out. Can I please ask that all my mobile phones are now switched off, or at least to silent, please, to avoid disturbing us. For clarity, this is a meeting of the Planning Committee held in public, not a public meeting. Therefore, your rights to address us are as set out in the committee papers as per the Constitution, and I will summarise them for you now. There is a petition on this item, so petitioners get 5 minutes to address committee. You will see traffic lights running. You get 4 on a green, 1 minute amber, which is indicates your time is coming to a close, and when it gets to red you should be stopped, and I will stop you. As it's a petition item, people on behalf of the applicant are also entitled to address committee, as is and obviously ward councillors are, and I do spot Councillor Bliss in the audience, and I presume therefore she is planning to address committee. So that's how it works. We are on YouTube tonight. It is live on YouTube. At the moment, all of you in the audience are not visible. All you can see is this table. At the point where you start speaking, you're at that table, you do become visible. Can I ask everybody, that includes officers, the councillors around the table, as well as petitioners, to please ensure you speak clearly into the microphones. Otherwise, it does make the YouTube record a little bit difficult to hear and follow for anyone who may be following this at home. Okay, in terms of committee tonight, the voting councillors tonight are I'll start on my far right, Councillors Tuckwell, Councillor Radia, Yarrow, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Edwards, and then on my left, Councillor Oswald and Councillor Duncan. Now, given that the 7 of them, they shouldn't manage to get a tied vote. But anything is possible in this world. If they get a tied vote, I have a casting vote. Other than that, I do not vote on any matter, not only this one. The officer team tonight, Richard Michalski is doing highways, Manduk Malhatra is presenting, James Roger, the head of planning officers, advice, Liz Penny from Democratic Services is our clerk. We have 2 from legal here tonight. Ben Egan is our legal advisor, and Kerry Monroe is just watching what goes on. I would also say that members have had the pack that was circulated last week. There is a very small addendum sheet on this item which doesn't really add massive amounts, but members have had that. There was also circulated to members earlier this week a letter dated 9th of February, which is the petitioner's summary of the points that they had at that point. So members have seen all of that. And I haven't anything further to add, so we'll get straight into the item. Mandy, if you can present this one for us.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Bear with me. It's not switched on. Sorry about that. Item 6 is the Willow Tree Depot in Ditchfield Road. The application site is highlighted in red on the location plan. I'll take you through the plans so you have an understanding of the application proposals. So the site at the moment is a former council depot site, and it's outlined in red. The built form is predominantly this L shape. The remaining area is predominantly yard. The land to the south comprises of parkland, and the community centre building is just here. Sorry, I know that members are looking in both directions. This is the existing site plan and the existing elevations, which comprises of the depot building, which is single storey in height, and you can make out the residential dwellings which surround the site in some of these plans. The proposed development seeks consent for 10 family dwelling houses, 6 of which are 3-bedroom, 4 are 4-bedroom homes. This is a palette of proposed materials, but if I take you through to the site plan, you can see that the proposals are laid out in fairly uniform format, comprising of 2 residential blocks on either side. Each property would have 2 car parking spaces and associated landscaping. Each property also benefits from private rear amenity space. The remaining plans will take you through sections and floor plans of the various types of 3-bedroom properties and 4-bedroom properties which are proposed on the site. Through the application process, we have sought to negotiate what we consider to be a more appropriate design for this application site. There are initially 11 units within a single terraced block throughout the entire estate. We've sought to reduce the massing down by breaking up the development into 2 blocks, and this was with working with the applicant team and the architects, and also removing a unit which was on the end of the site. These are proposed views and an aerial to show the relationship. So these are the back of the properties which exist and the separation distances. The layout of the car parking is proposed all to the front, as I mentioned. There is also a reinstatement of footpath which would allow better pedestrian access into what is the existing park entrance here. At the moment there is no pedestrian access on this side of Willow Tree of Ditchfield Road. Some more aerials, and this is some topographical images. So this plan best demonstrates depot building location and then the yard, which is a white colour in this image. Take you through to some photos. So this is actually taken from the front of the application site gate, looking out towards the community centre, which is across the road, and the residential area to the right. This is the depot building itself. Again, another depot building image. This is from the side of the depot. So the depot itself is enclosed by a fairly substantial sized wall and surrounded by open green area. This is the rear of the demise of the site, so that's a relationship with the existing residential properties to the rear. This is the community centre across the road and sites opposite the application site. Sorry, properties opposite the application site. This is the rear of the depot. So in this image you can see the existing barrier which restricts access into the parkland, and this is the depot building itself. This barrier would be removed and reinstated closer to the actual entrance into the park. It wouldn't be removed in its entirety to prevent unauthorised access into the park. This is the entrance into the park, I believe. There you go, and this is a view from the community centre building looking onto the depot building and an access into the park. I believe that's the end of the photographs. The planning permission is sought for the erection of 10 two-storey dwellings forming 2 terraces. It would also provide 20 car parking spaces, secure cycle spaces and landscaped amenity areas, involving the demolition of the existing single-storey depot building. The site has been identified as surplus to requirements, and there are no national, regional or local planning objections in principle to the loss of the previous depot use on this site. We have received representations objecting to the proposals on various grounds which are all detailed in the application committee report, as well as a petition of 61 signatures. Since the initial submission, as I mentioned earlier, the council have sought to seek amendments to the scheme to reduce not just the number of units, but also to reduce the layout, to improve the layout in terms of separation distances, and that has been achieved by removing 1 unit from the overall scheme. As a result, there are no adverse impacts upon visual amenities from the surrounding areas. There will be no material loss of residential amenity to surrounding occupiers, and the highway and pedestrian impacts are considered to be acceptable. There is also a Section 106 proposed for this site, and it's detailed in Section 2 of the committee report. Accordingly, the application is recommended for approval. There is an addendum on this item, which has a few clarifications, and I'll pass over to James Roger, who has one additional point.
Thank you, Maid. Yes, this application, because it's 10 units, has been assessed as a major application, and all the conditions that are imposed are those that we would typically put on a major application. One implication of this, I'm talking about page 12 in the landscaping condition, is that it ends up as a major application with a requirement for 4 active and 4 passive electrical charging points. So this particular ratio is something that's typically applied on major developments where you've got large flatted developments, communal parking or communal amenity areas. But in this particular case, with 10 family houses, you'd end up with 4 active spaces provided in individual curtilages and 4 passive. For those who don't know, the passive is effectively the underground cabling is installed, but effectively you don't have your charging point above ground, but it can be installed at a later date. Now, members may wish to consider, and I'm going to make a recommendation here, a slightly more sensible approach, which would be something you could do through the legal agreement, but bearing in mind that this is a council application, the council could provide electrical charging at a public accessible location in the local area that then serves a wider number of people, rather than having charging points installed within the curtilage of an individual house. If members were to agree such a recommendation, my recommendation would be that all the points be active rather than doing a split between active and passive, and a wording could be inserted into the legal agreement to the effect of a scheme for provision of 5 active charging points at a public accessible location in a local area. So I'll leave that point to members. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we'll do the petition on this one next. Mr. Grant, if you'd like to take a seat at the table, if you press the button on the middle of that microphone, it will light up, and then as you begin to speak, we will start timing you, okay?
Good evening. My name is Jim Grant. I represent the residents of the road surrounding Ditchfield Road. We strongly object to this planning proposal for the following reasons. Number one, we're all aware that the ground is an old dump containing hospital waste, old batteries, asbestos, aluminium casings and World War II munitions. Have the Hillingdon Planning Authority consulted the Environment Agency about this planning application? We don't think you have. When clearing this site starts, the fumes, gases, dust will affect all of the residents in this particular area, especially those with breathing problems, i.e. asthma, COPD, etc., lung diseases. How long will we have to endure the high level of pollution? Additionally, we know that the council have done soil sample tests. Where are the results? We have made numerous requests over several months and have been told that they are not yet back. This concerns us greatly. We feel that they are holding something from us. Your own land inspection of 2001 confirms that this land is toxic. Can the planning committee tell us how many truckloads of this toxic waste will be taken out of this site and how it will affect the congestion on the Broadmead Road? It can already take up to 30 minutes to reach the Ruislip Road at peak times. With residents parking on Broadmead Road from the overcrowded Taylor Wood Road development, this bus route is already very dangerous to both pedestrians and vehicles, being a cut through from the Hayes bypass to Ruislip Road. In addition, the addition of another 20 to 40 vehicles, if this development goes ahead, will make the road even more dangerous. There could be 68 new residents plus visitors, with only enough parking for 2 cars per house. Additionally, in the football season, as many as 50 plus cars will arrive. This will lead to parking in all the surrounding areas, to the inconvenience of the council tax-paying residents. Amenities. All the local doctors' lists are closed. Where will the new residents find a GP? The local primary schools are full, i.e. Yedding Primary and Brookside. The Willow School is a special needs unit, so where will the young children get educated? After 33 years, the residents on the south side of Stone Way will lose privacy to their gardens and the rear of their houses. Rear gardens, bathrooms, living rooms, kitchens, excluding light and sun, especially in the winter months. Worse still, number 12 will lose even more light and sun, as the end house on the proposed development extends 4.5 metres past the building line. We're asking this council to reject the planning application and reinstate the existing building as a council depot. Since its closure, Willow Tree open space has badly deteriorated, with rubbish everywhere, in the bushes and the trees. Benches are broken, the children's play area is dilapidated, the whole area is looking very sad. Other possible uses for the building with a little bit of work is OAP centre, health centre, youth centre, which we haven't got any youth centres in the area. In conclusion, if this development goes ahead, much to the annoyance of the residents of this ward, we will want assurances in writing. Working times, i.e. Monday to Friday, no weekend or bank holiday working, no deliveries outside working hours, the number of trucks that will be used to transport this toxic waste, no trucks waiting with engines running, the time the building work is expected to take with penalties for overrun. How will you control the vermin, which we know we have got there from out of this depot? What would the plans be to control the dust and the fumes? The main thing is on this as well is we would not want our own fences to be used as part of this development. Therefore, any other future development should incorporate residents having their own rear fence with a walkway between their fence and ours. Thank you. That's all I've got to say at the moment.
Hang on a moment, just in case members had any questions. I don't know if they do. Anybody indicating? No? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody on behalf of the applicant for this one intending to speak?
Hello, I'm Jenny Evans. I work for the council as a senior programme manager. We've read the officer's report and we agree with its recommendations, and we don't really wish to reiterate any of the questions and answers in that report. We know it's a 100% affordable housing scheme, but we're happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Anybody got any? Nope. Okay. That's you done. Easy that one. Councillor Blair.
Right, thank you. I'm not going to go over everything that the petitioners have already said. But firstly, I'd like to say that I'm really disappointed that the council didn't give the petitioners adequate notice. They were promised when the petition went in that they would be given at least 7 days notice of when the hearing would be, and they were not informed of this application until Friday, which is less than 5 days. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. There are concerns that the road and the pavement that are going to be built are too narrow. At the moment, there are lots of cars using that particular road to park up, particularly when there's football matches. And there's a lot of worry that it's going to push all the cars onto the adjoining streets, which are all still really narrow and can't cope with the extra parking. There's going to be a significant impact on number 12 Strome Way because the development is so close to his property where there was nothing before, and the resident is quite concerned at the loss of light that this will cause him. And again, I'd like to reiterate about the fences, because the residents have been told that their back fences are going to be used as the boundary for the new developments. And obviously, if it's the residents' fences, they're going to be quite concerned that if there's any damage, they'll be the ones who are responsible for fixing it and paying for any repairs. Again, local schools are oversubscribed, as are the local GPs. and there's concern about the sewerage and water provision as to whether the existing pipes can cope with the extra housing. And the last thing I'd like to say is that there seems to be a little bit of confusion as to whether this is social rented housing, affordable housing that was just said, or private housing, because there have been papers that have been seen by the residents that show that it's actually private housing. So I think we need some clarification on that. I think that's all.
Any questions for the council? I've got one or two of the clarifications here, so I shall do them in a moment. Okay, thank you. For absolute clarity, page 10 of the officer report, which gives the heads of terms for the S106 legal agreement that goes with this, reinforces what the council programme managers have said to us: all units to be delivered as affordable housing, and it specifies social rented tenure. So that is it. That is what we are agreeing. And any variation to that would need to come back before us. So let me scotch that rumour before it goes any further. Okay, there are. I'm going to take a few of these bits off now, just to. I'm going to leave 12 Stroud Way for a moment, because I think members might wish to come to that. But we will get officers to talk about that in a moment. The officer report does confirm that matters such as education provision, etc., are covered. There will be SIL payments on this that come to the council, so therefore that doesn't give us under planning something we can deal with there. There is a contamination condition there, but I'll get officers to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. The boundary fence is relatively easy to deal with, in the sense that should committee be agreeable, we can tweak a condition in a moment or two that will get a boundary fence in there. I would suggest to residents that you don't want a walkway between the two. I think you will find that will give you more problems, not less, over time. Where we've got alleyways down the back of properties, we tend to get more problems, not less. So it's certainly my experience elsewhere. But I fully understand the concern about fencing. But I suspect I know we can deal with that in time if we're happy with the rest of it. Okay, let's kick this one off. Can we take 12? Can we take the right plan is up there, Mandy? We've got the right one up there. Can we look at the impact on 12 Stroud, which is the house just on the absolute end, and how that's impacted by this? Because I think members are going to take us there in a moment, so I will start them off.
At 7.08 of the committee report, we do detail that there is a 4-metre separation distance between Stroud Way and the proposed development. 12 Stroud Way has a rear garden where the proposed properties have a front garden. It's been reviewed by officers and assessed. There is no loss of light. The distance between the properties, and yes, there is a 2-storey projection beyond the rear of number 12 from the new property, but the distance is such that it doesn't have an over-dominant or materially detrimental impact on number 12 Stromeway, hence the reason the application has been recommended for approval. That property, so the unit labelled B2 on this plan, I point to it here, has actually been pulled away from the boundary through the application process, through negotiations, to try and improve the relationship to number 12 Stromeway.
I'll open it for debate at that point. If anybody wants to have any more on that one, perhaps we'll start there now, because that's probably the easiest as officers, but I'm not constraining it to that, but it'll keep it neater if we do it that way. Councillor Duncan?
Could I just ask about the contamination on the site, please?
Yeah, I'm going to come hold that. I'll just say, are we happy with the officer explanation regarding 12 Stroud Way? Yeah, okay. We're comfortable with that, then sorry, Councillor Oswald.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I'm glad we're going to come to that, because I think that's quite an important issue. As far as fence damage is concerned, that will be with the developer, if any damage is caused to the boundary fences of any of those properties along there, I would assume.
Yeah, but I think actually if I read residents correctly, I suspect what they were worried about was if damage occurred afterwards to their fence, who'd be responsible for it. And I was going to suggest to committee, and I think the head of planning would be happy to come up with a wording for us, is that we tweak the landscaping condition to ensure that a full new fence is provided.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. That's fine. That's answered that. The other thing that I was going to ask about is the length of tenure, which is recommendation under small 2 in brackets. Length of tenure, is that going to be on a par with current council terms and conditions? If that can be answered, and how are you going to fix the level of rent? How's that going to be defined?
I'm hoping officers could help me with that one.
Now, social rented tenure has its own fixed level of rent, and therefore it would be part of the heads of term for the legal agreement and would be secured in perpetuity for the site. So they will always be social rented housing. So we have different rent levels. London living rent is 80%, and obviously that's not considered to be affordable, but social rent is the rent value which has been assessed to be affordable for local residents, so it's set locally. Is that?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So what's it going to be then? Because if it's in the heads of terms, it doesn't say anything here about what it is, or is that going to come back to us?
Won't come back. It doesn't normally come back. I can ask it to, potentially.
Sorry, each borough is different. Obviously, the values of properties are different in different areas, and therefore the social rent is a different proportion. Some boroughs they're 60%, other boroughs it might be more affordable at 80%. So we set our own social rent level, and that will be within the standard social rent heads of terms clauses in the legal agreement.
Can I paraphrase an answer for a second? Can I just take that as a hold for a minute, because I don't think we're going to go any further with that one. Can I open the contamination one up, because I think more...
Can I just ask a clarifying question on that social rent?
Yeah, of course.
Will this be set separately from the standard social rent tenure that exists across the whole borough? Are we bringing in a new class for this group of properties? No. So it's the equivalent to all the other social housing across the borough. Thank you.
Okay, fine. Okay, if that's got what we... Contamination I will open up, because somebody's going to take me there, and Councillor Duncan, I think you wanted to anyway, so let's give you a start then.
Residents gave quite full information about the type of contamination that they believe is in the site, quite varied over a period of years. Do we have the reports that they had requested but hadn't received any information about? Can we know what's in them and how contamination is proposed to be dealt with?
So the condition we've got here on page 14, condition 12, this is one of our sort of oldest and most trusted planning conditions. I know that may sound an odd use of language, but this isn't a bespoke condition we've just put on this application. This is a tried and tested planning condition that we use for both sites that have limited contamination all the way up to the biggest development sites with the highest levels of contamination. So this is the same condition, for example, this committee agreed for the development on the Nestles factory site. It's the same one used for the RF Uxbridge site. So the officer position on this is that this condition will address all contaminated land issues. Now, I know there's a point being raised by residents in terms of what information has the council as applicant prepared to date concerning this matter, but I don't mean to overcomplicate things, but the view of the local planning authority is that once approved, we would expect, as long as the submission to discharge a condition complies with all the parameters set down here, my expectation is we will fully address all contaminated land issues, as long as this condition, as set out, is complied with. And I know that doesn't completely answer your question, but it's the honest answer.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, that's helpful. The thing is that I understand residents' concern about contaminated land. I'm sure we all do. It doesn't, it's self-evident. On the Southall Gasworks site, At one time, I know that was one of the most contaminated sites in London, and the difficulty about that was how were you going to dig out half the site and deal with that. And in the end, it was resolved by capping the site in some way, so that there was a different understanding and a different method of dealing with that. What I want to try and get to is, I understand if you're living in a house backing onto this site, you've got young children playing in the back garden, and you're going to have lorry loads of stuff taken out with fine dust particles in the air. Of course, it doesn't matter what the plan says. There are human beings carrying this out, and you're going to be concerned for yourself and your family. Why I asked about this is there going to be a level of contamination that can be dealt with by capping, in which case there isn't a great level of disturbance, there isn't a lot of digging out of stuff and taking it away, which, gives rise to, more concern by people.
Point I perhaps didn't make very well was that the wording of this particular condition, because of the way it's structured, requiring identification of all the risks, limitations, the recommendations for all necessary remedial measures, the way it structures it is our experience that this condition should cover all of the issues that I believe are concerning the local residents. So that would be the clarification, hopefully the comfort I would give planning committee.
Can we please stay quiet, because otherwise
Yeah, I mean, it's quite true. I will say, as residents are not free to say that, there is a local nursery that's held in the community centre regularly, with children playing, very young children playing outside as well as inside the building. So, yes, I think there'd be widespread concerns. When these measures are put in place, if this is all approved and it all goes ahead, how would that be communicated to concerned residents within the area? Because obviously this is going to be an ongoing matter that we would need to address, not just to the satisfaction of ourselves, but to the local community.
If I can perhaps help on that. So we've also imposed a demolition and construction management plan, and developers often through that do communications with local residents. If members wish, we could slightly alter the wording of that to ensure that there is resident communications.
I think in this case there are sensitive issues, and that would be, I think, wise thing to do.
So in effect it goes up to VII if it had a VI, B and 3 I's. So effectively a wording requiring communication with local residents throughout the demolition and construction process, or words to that effect. Yeah.
I think we need to make sure we add the word contamination just in that.
Just going back a point, Chairman, members have already talked about a slightly bespoke wording to do with fencing. It might be, given that we're going to end up with one or two examples of complex wording, we look at Chairman and Labour League agreeing.
We'll.
Because I've got a feeling we're going to be talking about a few changes here that will end up quite complicated.
We may well be. So let's just see. Next issue, Councillor Yarrow.
I just want to come back to the fencing and make sure that there is no confusion. That when we said that another fence would be put up, it doesn't mean one fence and it belongs to the other properties. Two fences.
No,
I want to make sure that everybody understands. It means that there's
exactly
going to be
a
small gap and two fences.
No, it's a fence erected on this land by the developer.
Right.
Okay. Absolute clarity. That's why I've got to tweak a condition in a minute. So. Earning my money here. Anybody else got any other issues on this one? Councillor Duncan.
Can I just say on the having a passageway between the rear of existing fences and those proposed? I would not be in favour of that for the reasons of antisocial behaviour. I can tell you, as a councillor in my ward and many other councillor colleagues in their wards, they are absolute nightmares for residents because antisocial behaviour, drug dealing, all kinds of things can go on in these areas. So although I can understand residents' concerns about this, hopefully if there's a commitment that fencing, strong fencing is going to be put up on the development site, that will not interfere or damage with existing residents' fencing.
Okay,
Well, yeah, gates get left open.
Councillor Duncan makes a good point, which was the one I made earlier, that most of our experiences with reared alleyways is it will not improve the security of your properties or the new properties.
Yeah.
We spend most of our time where they do exist closing them off
Trying to deal with the problem.
and trying to deal with the problem. So
trying to get people to...
I certainly wouldn't wish to add that into a scheme.
No.
Councillor Oswald.
Oh, I'm
Sorry, did you have one more?
Sorry.
Yep.
The other thing is, on the issue of the charging points, I would suggest that a good place to have those charging points would be in the car park of the community centre. It seems fairly obvious. It's very close and convenient for local residents and also for people visiting the community centre as well. It is a public place. It's under the council's control. So I would hope that it would be possible to arrange for something there. The other thing is, on the issue of pollution, and I know that this isn't a greatly polluted area, but it is within the AQUIMA. One of the things we can do is we can plant trees that absorb pollution, sometimes to quite a dramatic extent. And I would hope that in the landscaping, I know we have a standard landscaping condition, but perhaps at some point that could be amended, or this could be a word or two added, that we do look at species, and they're not necessarily the most expensive ones. For example, silver birch is very good, and that's you know, a very inexpensive tree to buy and install. If we can maximise our planting for pollution absorbing trees as well, and if that can be part of it.
Well, I suggest we've just added a new informative to this growing list of items that was there. Thank you, Councillor, for that one. Has anybody got any other bits? Councillor Oswald, sorry, you did indicate.
Yes, okay, thank you, Chairman. No, I mean, Janet's picked up most of that. I was going to talk about the charging point. I don't know where you're going to put that. Janet's point's quite good, actually, but could that come back?
Well, what I'm going to suggest in a moment is that the head of planning has made a valid suggestion. We've changed a number of things on this. Yeah. And I need to put my mic on, thank you for reminding me. And that the changes need to come back for myself and the Labour lead, or if one of you is deputising the Labour lead as you've heard the application, it might be more sensible.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It would be more sensible if one of you did it as you were here, to agree these variations, because there are a number of them now. Can I just take the electric charging points argument and make sure we're comfortable with that? The head of planning is suggesting that we swap what's in the report for effectively 5 provided in the community and wording to be agreed. Are we happy to go with that, or do we want something different? Councillor Edwards.
No, I understand it, and in the fullness of time, the replacing of 5 parking spaces presently with electric ones, great. In the intervening time, my experience of a lot of community charging points is they're left vacant most of the time, and we're all fighting over the other parking spaces. I don't know what the parking pressures are on the community centre. If this exacerbated the problem by removing 5 presently used parking spaces for electric ones that aren't utilised, that's an issue. So I do think we have to consider the impact and whether or not there are presently the capacity in there of unused parking spaces to convert into electric ones.
The intent that there was slightly more than perhaps I let slip in terms of the way I read out the possible wording. By putting in the local area, you'd effectively you wouldn't be tying us to one particular site where there might be an issue with the landowner, but you'd mean that it'd be somewhere that would be in the local area, so it wouldn't be in the far opposite corner of the borough. I would have thought.
So, in terms of changes to what we started with, We have an informative on trees. We've got boundary fences. We've got amendments to the electric charging point condition, and we've got something on communication which will need to go into the demolition and construction management plan and probably into contaminated land as well. I suspect the same piece will wind up in both. Now that's my list, unless anyone's got any others. Councillor Yarrow.
Thank you, Chairman. I would prefer to see that all the properties were fitted with passive charging points. I mean, if it's going to go into a community centre, they might not be able to get on at the time that they want to get on. At least if you've got a house and it's got a passive one and you want to put the active bit in and pay for it, it's yours. You know your car's going to get charged. To actually have to go to somewhere else and find that there isn't anywhere and your battery's flat, really defeats the object. So there is another proposal. Let's put passive ones in every one.
Well, I can be persuaded on either. I personally think there's more advantage to the community at the current moment in having them in the community centre, but look, I'm not going to fall out on one or the other. What's just the consensus of members, and officers will write it up whichever way you ask for it, I suspect.
Well, if I could, Chairman, can I just say that I thought James said earlier in the presentation, or part of the presentation, that the power cables were going to be put in anyway for future use. Did you say that, James?
Well, that's under the proposal as per the report. If we change it, they wouldn't be.
So what I was basically explaining is that, so if we had a scheme on a site for just 4 houses going to the north or central and south, you'd have no charging. The only reason we've got a requirement on this scheme is because it's a larger scale development. But that kind of, the requirement for a certain percentage of passive and active, it was originally intended, I think personally, for slightly larger schemes with communal areas, not for schemes of just 10 houses where it's all defined private space. So that's why we're suggesting a possible alternative of on publicly accessible, an alternative location in the local area, with that to be agreed through, in effect, the fact that the council is the largest landowner in the local area.
I'll take a view and then we'll move it.
Thank you, Chairman. I very much agree with Councillor Yarrow that in an ideal world we would see passive being put into all new builds. However, that's not presently our policy, and I'm a bit hesitant of making policy on the hoof. And so at this moment in time, I think that the community facility would be a better way forward, but I do think that there is now a time when we need, as a council, to take a view on how do we future-proof our buildings, new buildings.
That is a matter, as you know, for others in other places, and of course the London plan has a bearing on all of these matters. I think we about got to the end of all the notes I had. I've summarised the changes. Could somebody give me a proposal to take me forward?
Thank you, Chairman. I very, very much understand the concerns of residents here with regards to the impact, particularly in the short term, that a build here may cause on them. There are many, many conditions put into this report, which, in my experience, allay those concerns, although I understand that residents may not accept that assurance. With the tightening of the conditions with regards to the boundary treatment, the charging points, and the communications, particularly around the construction plan and the plan to deal with the contamination being shared with the community, the informative on the trees, I am comfortable to move the officer's recommendation subject to those changes.
Okay. Thank you, which accurately does summarise the changes that the Head of Planning and I have got noted, so that's good. Can I have a seconder, please?
Well, I'll second it, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Conditions.
Thank you. Can all those in favour please clearly show? Thank you. That one is approved. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much indeed, and that does conclude tonight's meeting. They're going to take it out.